that's a side weeds point, but the judge, as I've said this to you on your show, the judge, if he determines that he or she determines that he lied, could factor that into the sentence and could impose a harsher sentence on the specific finding that, Mr. Defendant, this court finds that you were not truthful in your testimony when weighed against the testimony that was put in by the prosecution, and that's a factor in sentencing, that type of thing. So, crystal ball, I don't expect that he would prosecute perjury just because the jury convicts him. But the judge, you may hear from the judge on that point, Andrew.
Doug, let's talk about hate crimes themselves, because many critics of hate crimes laws say that they will be, abused, taken advantage of. But you're seeing throughout this trial that that's not the case. That prosecutors take hate crimes laws seriously and allege hoaxes of hate crimes very seriously as well. Kind of discuss, maybe you have any foreknowledge of this, just hate crime law, jurisprudence and the like. What do you think about that? It rings true, does it not?
Oh, absolutely. But what's baked into your question is the fact, and you heard this in snippets in passing, something like this undermines the actual prosecution of legitimate hate crimes. It does a disservice, you heard people say, and they're right, to legitimate victims of these type of crimes, okay? And that's what really could irk a judge in evaluating this situation. The other point real quick is whether or not he would, show remorse of any kind. Finally, not to be too harshly editorializing myself, but the argument there is often, well, they're appealing, so therefore he's not going to, make any kind of contrition statement. But back to your original observation about hate crimes, hate crimes are prosecuted by local prosecutors. They're prosecuted by the Department of Justice. They're crimes, by the way, for your viewers, where somebody does an offense and a specific component of the offense, because you asked about jurisprudence, is that the person, is a member of a particular ethnic group, particular religious group. That's the backbone, the basis for alleging and trying somebody for a hate crime. So here, he set this up, is the allegation, and the jury's going to tell us in 10 minutes whether they believe he set it up. But if he set it up, the point is, he set it up, one of the big points that Dan Webb made was that he originally had said that the attackers were white, okay, and then that blew up in his face, and he changed the description to, I think, pale, I believe it was, and people observed, and this isn't racial at all, that the two brothers are actually dark-skinned, so that made no sense, along with many other things that he said. But again, to repeat the point, if he set up this to look like it was a hate crime and it wasn't, that's a disgraceful slap in the face to those who have been victimized by these type of crimes.
All right, Doug, just want to reset here. We're now at the top of the hour, 4 o'clock here in Phoenix, Arizona, 5 o'clock there in Chicago. And for our viewers who are just joining us right now, we now know that a verdict is in the Jussie Smollett trial. Jurors have been deliberating for hours all day. We unfortunately just lost that shot. We have here a live look inside of the courthouse right there as we await for Jussie Smollett and his team to enter in to hear the verdict read. We just saw the prosecution team come in as well. We're being joined live here by former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, who has been with us throughout the duration of this trial, breaking down the particulars, breaking down the nuts and bolts. We have Matt Finn from Fox News, Dane Placco from Fox 32 Chicago. They're on the ground as well. We might be speaking with Dane in a little bit, but Doug, a lot of people have been following this very closely, and I know not only we talk about the legal questions here with you and me, but we set the stage for what trials and cases like this meant for the country. What does it say about the country that we follow this so closely, that this generated so much interest at the time. Accusations, of racism, of race baiting, homophobic attacks that led many prominent members of public life to essentially jump on that bandwagon at the time without all the facts. And of course, now we know there was a deeper story there, and a jury will decide how punitive to make it, and how what the consequences will be for an alleged hate crime hoax. Doug?
Well, there's two-part response I would give to your observation, which is yes, prominent politicians, people in mainstream media, people in Hollywood, they jumped right in, over their ski tips, to use the cliche, the well-worn cliche, and they, this is terrible, this is horrible. And your point is very well taken. Maybe, hopefully, to put some positive on it, these figures in politics and Hollywood and the media will at least learn some lesson, which is, one of the most fundamental things in my world is, we don't prejudge things, etc. But the second part of it, and that's why I said there's two parts, is, wouldn't it be refreshing if somebody in that group I described stepped forward and say, you know what, in retrospect, I shouldn't have said those things. That wouldn't kill them, okay? But you will not hear that, okay? And the point is that, back to your observation about why is this trial so noteworthy, you have these ancillary social discussion issues, which really don't have much to do with what's going on in court. In Rittenhouse, it was guns.
Doug, we're just going to have to pause here. It looks like I think we do have a shot of Smollett here coming out of his black SUV. Stand by. We're just going to see if he makes a comment to the media here. So right now we just got this shot in, and we have been waiting, and that is Jussie Smollett's team coming to the courthouse to hear the verdict read in his case. The jury done deliberating. The verdict has been reached, and we will now hear in a minute's time what that verdict is. We're just going to watch these scenes alongside you.
Yeah, don't get any closer, please. Your fans, sir. What are you hoping for the outcome of the case? Are you nervous at all for the verdict, sir? Back, please. Back. Message to the naysayers, sir. Back, please. Any comments for your fans, sir? I'm trying to go. Back. Sir, you nervous about the outcome of the case? Message to your fans? What are you hoping for the verdict, sir?
Okay, so we just watched Jussie Smollett and his team enter the courthouse rather. They're going to go through security now, and we're going to get kind of a frontal shot of them walk into the courtroom to hear the verdict read. Let's watch. of course, reporters definitely were shouting questions to Smollett as he was flanked by family members and supporters. He didn't answer any questions, but you have to wonder what is going through his mind right now. The verdict will be read momentarily. And will he be convicted, or will he be acquitted, or we just don't know just yet. And we will wait. We don't want to speculate on that. We've been bringing in so much expert analysis. Let's just watch these scenes as both the defense team, Smollett, his family members and friends enter into the courtroom there in Chicago.
Jussie, how you feeling? That was it, right?
So how does he go stand in the hallway and shoot?
Okay, so there we saw All right, so that's Fox 32's Dane Placco. We just saw Jussie Smollett enter into the courtroom. Let's go now to Fox 32's coverage. We're going to hear from them very, very soon. Then we're going to bring back in Doug Burns to talk about all of this. And this is just a tape replay. In case you might not have seen it the first time around, let's just watch it one more time. And we're just going to play this one more time for you. They're playing it yet again of Jussie Smollett arriving to the courthouse just moments ago with family, with his defense team, with his lawyers as they await the verdict to be read in his case. And then we're going to bring in more expert analysis from former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, and then we will update you right away as to what the jury verdict is.
Sir, you nervous about the outcome of the case? Message to your fans? What are you hoping for the verdict, sir?
And then now that you get the adrenaline going and you get a feel of how that goes, you'll do better as far as angle. You'll do better as angle.
Yes.
Is concerned.
Yes.
But you want to hang out with this gear here? You could power it down now.
Sure.
All right, and unfortunately, we don't have now any live pictures. We are going to get back to the live picture outside of court and watch Jussie Smollett and his entourage leave once the verdict is read. And so once the verdict is read, we're going to be obviously presenting it, reporting it, talking about it, but let's still bring in former federal prosecutor Doug Burns to discuss all of this. And Doug, we just watched Jussie Smollett enter court with this large entourage like he's been doing each and every day of the trial. What do you think is going through his head right now? You've been in so many different cases and trials. How does a defendant prepare for something like this?
Well, I'm sure he's nervous. It's a tense moment, obviously, and I'm sure the lawyers have read tea leaves to him. You know, he asked the lawyers, what do you think? What does this mean? I mean, again, I've seen a lot of strange things happen, but at the same time, this seemed like a logically progressed, jury deliberation. In other words, they asked, for a chart that broke down sort of a timeline of the events in question, which is very, very normal. They obviously discussed that timeline, back and forth in detail. The amount of time seems entirely logical and reasonable. Very often, a rejection of a case would be quick. That's not a bright line rule, but it's a rule. You come out after an hour and a half. We've reached a verdict. That can be bad news for prosecutors very often, and I've seen that a couple of times over the years. But again, to me, reading tea leaves and, using my crystal ball skills, whatever they may be, it seems like they went through everything. And, as I said earlier, almost undoubtedly are going to reach a guilty verdict, either on all counts or, as you had said, it's a possibility, some type of split off on one or two counts. But again, I didn't see the distinction between counts. Each of the 6 counts, by the way, is the same offense. Not only is it the same label, disorderly conduct, but it's, being untruthful to law enforcement, different iterations. That's why you have 6 of them. So again, this isn't an earth-shaking point, but one conviction on one is, very similar to whether it's on more than one, quite honestly, given the fact that it's such a high-profile celebrity case and so forth. Nobody would claim victory on the defense side, for example, if it were hypothetically a conviction on 1 out of 6. It's still a conviction of a felony count.
And Doug, we're learning from Matt Finn that Smollett is in the courtroom right now after entering with his entourage, his supporters, his team of defense lawyers, and just moments now, the verdict will be read in this case. And right now, though, Doug, stand by. Let's go out to Fox 32 in Chicago for their continuing coverage of this story as well.
Anything about how they feel about this case, that it was just 9 hours?
I don't think so, because even though it was just 9 hours, that's maybe one full day of deliberations. And the trial was a week-long trial. There were a lot of videos played, a lot of testimony from police who interviewed witnesses, the key witnesses themselves, including Jussie Smollett. So I don't think it's unusual, and you can't tell much by the fact they came back within 9.5 hours or so.
So, Lair, as you've been describing and explaining this case to us, it's possible the actor could face up to 3 years in prison. But isn't the general sense that he's more likely to have probation if in fact, it goes that way?
If he's treated like other defendants at 26th in California and in other courthouses around the state of Illinois, a first-time offender who has behaved himself, has shown up for all of his court hearings, never jumped bond or disappeared, and doesn't pose any sort of threat, typically would get probation after a crime like this if he is convicted. And, it's always the tensest moment of all when the verdict is about to be announced, but it's an awful lot more tense when the defendant is facing years or decades in jail. In this case, it pretty much will be whether Jussie Smollett is convicted and gets a fairly light sentence or is set free and gets no sentence at all.
Can you tell us more, walk us back about the charges that he is facing?
Well, they're felony disorderly conduct charges, and each one involves an alleged lie that he told to Chicago police officers. It's kind of like obstruction of justice, but it's a lesser charge in Illinois. And in these cases, the prosecutors allege that in 6 different cases he lied to police, he manufactured that crime, and then he lied to police and denied manufacturing the crime. And it's basically, the case comes down to a he said, they said, because he says there was no manufactured crime, that he was honestly a victim, whereas the 2 Osendero brothers say that, in fact, they were put up to it and they were paid to commit the crime. His alleged motive was that he believed he had received a threatening letter, and his bosses, the Empire producers, had not taken the threats
Larry, let's
against
jump
his
in. Larry,
let's go.
Let me jump in. I think we've got some new information. The judge is in the courtroom. The jurors are there. Let's go to Dane Placco and see if we have the verdict. Dane?
Yeah, I'm waiting on a text to come down from Casey Cronus, our Fox colleague who's up in the courtroom right now. Judge James Lynn walked into the courtroom about 3 minutes ago. The jury has been brought into the courtroom. Judge Lynn opened up by telling everybody to control their emotions regardless of the verdict. And it sounds as though the verdict is being read at this moment. Again, 6 counts of felony disorderly conduct. It's likely they will go through the verdicts on each of those counts. Count 1, count 2. Count 1, guilty. Jussie Smollett, guilty of felony disorderly conduct on count 1. And that is just coming down now from the 7th floor of the criminal courthouse. We'll have to hear what his reaction is to that later. We know that he's been fairly stoic during the trial. He looked very stoic as he walked in here just moments ago. But again, count 1, guilty. Jussie Smollett, guilty. And I'm getting another text, count 2, guilty as well. So at least 2 of the 6 counts right now, Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of disorderly conduct, but it's a felony disorderly conduct, and as Larry was just explaining, that does carry a potentially longer prison term of possibly 3 years in prison, although most of the attorneys we talked to say that's not likely. Count 3, guilty again. So on half the counts now, Jussie Smollett has been found guilty, and we're loading up another count right now. Again, Casey Cronus, our new colleague from Fox 32, just joined the station last week, is up in the courtroom on one of the benches. It's an older courtroom, a large courtroom, but capacity very limited up there because of COVID, only 57 people allowed. And we should be getting a 4th count verdict here in just a couple of moments. Count 4, guilty. So again, 4 of the 6 counts so far against Jussie Smollett, he has been found guilty. And it's likely, if I may surmise, that there'll be guilty counts on 5 and 6 as well, because as Larry was saying just moments ago, these counts are all pretty much alike. They're essentially 6 counts for the same crime. And I can say, I don't have to say alleged crime now, I can say crime. Count 5, yes indeed, guilty. They're all the same crime, and that is for lying to a Chicago police officer. There were 3 separate occasions in which he was interviewed by police. Each of those occasions he spoke to 2 officers, and so the way that Dan Webb, the special prosecutor, formulated his case was to charge 2 counts for each of those interactions with police. And now we're loading up the 6th count here. And let me tell you what it's going to be. Again, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 guilty, and count 6 not guilty. Well, that's a bit of a surprise. So he's guilty on 5 counts and not guilty on a 6th count. However, it's a big win for the special prosecutor's office because they only needed 1 guilty count. They could have been not guilty on 5 counts and guilty on 1, and guilty on 5 is essentially the same thing. So again, Jussie Smollett just found guilty on 5 of the 6 felony disorderly conduct charges he faced in this trial that took about a week and a half here at the Layton Criminal Courthouse. Global scrutiny on this case, both when it happened and here right now. So we're looking forward to hearing what Mr. Smollett's reaction was in the courtroom. We're looking forward to hearing his lawyers.
Uh-oh, we lost Dane for a second. We'll see if he can hear us. We were going to ask him some questions, but if not, let's check in with Larry Yellen. We want to ask about these charges, Larry. Were they all the same? Count 6. What's different? Uh-oh, you're muted. Okay, there you are. We hear you now. So what's different about count 6, Larry?
Alrighty. Count 6, I'm not sure which alleged lie that was, but each of these counts was a different statement he gave to police, which prosecutors attempted to prove were false statements. On the 6th statement, and it was just one of the 6, he was found not guilty, but on the other 5, the jury found that he did in fact lie to police, and that's felony disorderly conduct. What's interesting from the juror's point of view is that this suggests that it wasn't a slam dunk. It might explain why it took 9.5 hours. And it also shows that they considered each individual count very closely. And if it had been all six, you know, people might have said, well, the jurors just went through it quickly and didn't really study the case closely. But the fact that one of them was a not guilty suggests that they took their job very seriously. What's happening in the courtroom now, I would imagine, typically the defense will ask for each of the jurors to be polled individually, and they will be asked, juror number one, was this and is this your verdict? And the juror will say yes or no. And that's a technicality, but the defense always asks that that be done in these cases. That'll take another 5 minutes or so, and then the judge will likely set a sentencing date. And between now and the sentencing date, there will be a pre-sentence report, an extensive look into Jussie Smollett's past, factors which might have led him to commit these crimes, factors that will sentence, and that will all take place. Typically, the sentencing would
So what do you think is going to happen, guys? Do you think he's going to get up there on the interview and go,
About this surprise you?
how could they've got it wrong?
I'm never surprised when Dan
Do you think he's going to get up there and
First of all, I
say,
should that. I've been watching
I'm not
Dan
guilty,
White
how'd they
since,
get it wrong?
I hate to date myself, but back to 1983.
I don't
when he started
know.
Prosecuting judges at the Dirksen Federal Building in the Graylord investigation. Webb, the selection of Webb as the lead prosecutor, the special prosecutor in this case, sent a sign that this case was going to be very tough for Jussie Smollett to beat. Secondly, most of the defendants at 26th and Cal, just like those at the Dirksen Building, most of them result in guilty charges when they decide to go to trial. So that doesn't surprise me either. I am a little surprised, and I want to see why they found the one not guilty. If 5 of these were lies that were told to the police officers, you'd think that the jury would have found that, wow, he's just a liar and he was lying about everything. But in one case, they found that he was not guilty. A minor victory that won't make much of a difference in the sentence, I don't think.
So in this case, a lot of
All right, some great legal breakdown there from Fox 32 in Chicago. Let's just put up the tweet we have from Casey Cronus, who was in the courtroom when it was read. The jury finding Jussie Smollett guilty on 5 of 6 counts. And you can see count 1 through 5 guilty, count 6, though, not guilty. That's very interesting, and I want to bring Doug Burns back into this. You know, Doug, why would it just be the 1 count for not guilty? What would go into a decision like that if they are all these disorderly conduct case 4 felony charges?
Yeah, no, you know, I've seen this happen a number of times over the years. I'll give you one practical footnote that I think you'll find interesting. I've seen count 1 be not guilty, and everybody really has their hopes up, only to be deflated when the following counts are guilty. But to your question, which is a good one, no, with the caveat that I don't know the minutia of exactly what that was. I'm going to tell you right now that it's entirely possible that, you know, the particular statements in that particular count may have been, you know, technically more defensible, you know, could be the situation, not as clearly as wrong. But the analysis just rendered by the expert, I guess it was out there, was very strong. And he made some points, you know, that I was making and would reiterate, which is that 5 out of 6 as a practical legal matter, as a matter of legal fundamentals, is not going to make any difference at all. And then is an ironic nuance point, which I think everyone will find interesting. And the ironic nuance point is that a finding of not guilty on count 6 actually can hurt him, Smollett, on appeal. Isn't that interesting? Because, and I think the legal expert, I guess it was Mr. Yellen, touched on that. The point is, this claim of, oh, the jury just rubber stamped and so on goes right out the window. And in the brief in the Court of Appeals, the state is writing the jury conscientiously differentiated out each count. And as you saw that reflected in their painstaking arrival of a not guilty on the 6th count. The bottom line, and it is ironic, is that that could actually hurt him a little bit on appeal.
And, you know, Doug, let's talk next steps. Of course, we were talking about the avenues for appeal that are open to Jussie Smollett, but also the sentencing phase now as well. What do you think that is going to be? Now we can no longer call this an alleged hate crime hoax. Indeed, a jury found that it was a hoax. and those counts of disorderly conduct convicting Smollett on them. But as far as sentencing goes, what does your gut tell you? What would a judge be thinking right now?
Well, no, it's a great question. I mean, that's the logical question. I mean, first of all, what happens tonight and tomorrow and everything else is everyone starts wearing around their neck, as some lawyers that I know like to say, you know, the idea, as you put it very well, you know, no more alleged hoax, this and that. You know, a jury has found that he was untruthful when he said it wasn't a hoax and so on. And that stings badly on the defense side. Now, sentencing, though, here is fascinating because you have the confluence of public relations and media at law, whereas in the ordinary case, meaning of no great notoriety, which is the vast majority of cases, you don't have the media dynamic, you don't have a public relations dynamic. Why do I say that? Because in the day-to-day case, a person in this situation, much more likely than not to come in and say, okay, I do apologize for my conduct, I do want to show remorse, etc. But that's pretty much foreclosed. And I have to think about this a little more myself because the verdict just happened, but that's kind of foreclosed by this notion of, you know, maintaining that, you know, I've seen defendants time and time again for years and years and years say, you know, all right, the jury found me guilty, but I'm not guilty. I didn't do this, okay? They may have found me guilty, that's fine. It's unfair and so on. So my roundabout answer, I apologize to your very good question, is that I don't think that he's going to show remorse, okay? You know, when he goes before the court for sentencing. I think he'll be very quiet and he won't say a lot.
All right, Doug, we're going to just keep you on standby here. We're taking a live look. Well, we just lost that live look, unfortunately, but that is outside of the courthouse as we now are going to await Jussie Smollett and his team and their exit. And, of course, they'll have to report back to court for the sentencing phase as well. And that's what we were talking with Doug Burns about. Let's get back into Fox 32 Chicago's great coverage of this. They're speaking with Fox 32's Dane Placco about now reaction and fallout. Jussie Smollett found guilty on 5 of the 6 disorderly conduct counts.
He was found not guilty of count 6. I looked that up, and it is him telling a detective, Robert Graves, that he had been a victim of aggravated battery. So that one he's not guilty on. The other counts 1 through 5, were his telling various officers that he had been a victim of this crime.
And that may suggest that the jury didn't believe Detective Graves in the manner that he reported the story, or if Graves had testified, Graves' demeanor on the stand maybe wasn't believable. But in any case, the key factor here is that 5 out of 6 he was found guilty. And as Dane's pointed out, there will be a pre-sentence investigation that'll be done, I believe, by the probation department. They will look at everything in his past, what merits a longer sentence versus a shorter sentence. Those are not made public. They are discussed in court at the time of sentencing, but it's not something that will typically be released to the public or to the news media. And I was curious whether or not they set a sentencing date or if they're going to wait and see how long that investigation takes. One thing we haven't discussed yet, Dane pointed out that the defense lawyers will be coming down. I would not be surprised at all if they announced their intent to appeal this jury finding, and they were upset during the trial at the judge's demeanor. You may recall a couple of days ago, one of the defense lawyers broke down in tears and claimed that Judge Lynn had lunged at her during a sidebar outside the presence of the jury, and she had never seen a judge do that. She also claimed that the judge had been smirking or not taking some of the cross-examination questions by defense lawyers seriously, and indicating that with his facial expressions. All of this will go into a defense appeal of this case. It'll go to an appellate court in Illinois, and it may be more than a year before we eventually find out if the jury's verdict is upheld or overturned by an appellate court.
So in your estimation, it's maybe a long time before we really get this thing finished?
Well, he'll be sentenced, and it's possible if he just gets probation, the appeal won't be that significant. But in order to clear his name, while his, say for example, he's put on probation, which a lot of us expect, While he's serving that probation, his appeal will still go forward, and he could be seeking to clear his name with that appeal.
Sure.
On the other hand, he may just decide to let the whole thing drop. But the sense I get from his defense team, from their statements, is that they don't believe he got a fair trial from this judge, and they will be seeking to overturn it regardless of what the sentence is.
All right, Larry, you were cut off a little bit earlier, but you were trying to explain, in addition to this sentence of possible probation, how he has to pay anyone back. Is there restitution in the case?
Well, the city is trying to recover the dollars that were spent with all the police who investigated the case, the overtime that went into it, the amount of money that the city invested. I forget.
Hey guys, I just wanted to come in here real quick and ask you, what are you thinking about this? What are you thinking about this verdict? Do you think it was fair? Do you think he's going to claim it wasn't? I'm almost sure it wasn't fair. I think he's going to claim that the verdict was not fair from the beginning. But I think this just goes to show that he's as good a liar as he was an actor. Oh my God, yes, I just put that out there. Yeah, he wasn't good at either one, you guys. You know what gets me is he had it all. I mean, I couldn't afford one of this guy's ink pens. I could not afford one of his ink pens. And he didn't care. He just threw it away. I don't understand that. How can you have everything and still not have enough? I don't know, you guys. I don't know what you guys think. So you're wanting, let's see, let's get you up here. Hi, biggest complainer. I thought I was, but I guess, hey, there's two of us. Hoping 1 year minimum with parole after. I'm hoping for it. I'm hoping he's going to get something, because I'm almost feeling like the slap on the wrist is coming. I really do. But you know, all this did was open the door for the civil suits, and they're what's going to get him. The civil suit was waiting to find how he ended up at court. Now that he's found guilty, all those civil suits can come in, and they're going to come in. Believe me, they've been knocking at his door the whole time, but now they're going to flood in. Those civil suits are going to be there. I mean, from the cops on down, Osendario brothers, hey, everybody's going to have a civil suit. This guy better be making buku money. I mean, bigger than Travis Scott, because he's going to have as many civil suits as Travis Scott, I think, which would be a lot. So anyway, let me see what's going on now, guys. I have to mute my mic while they're talking and then unmute my mic while they're not talking. And I'm not real good at it, so I'm still practicing.
What the exact dollar figure was, but the city wants to get that money back, and they will they're pursuing that right now, I believe, in a case, a federal case, which is on hold at the Dirksen Federal Building until they saw how this trial came out. Now that he's been convicted, I think that will impact the city's decision to go forward, and they will probably try and recover those dollars. Mayor Rahm Emanuel at the time, and then Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, were just furious that they had been duped into pouring thousands of dollars worth of resources into this investigation, which they later determined to be a hoax.
We should also mention, as you talk about that, we did reach out to Chicago police for some sort of a reaction or response. They have yet to respond to our inquiry. Right now, we want to head back to the Layton Criminal Courts building and talk to Dane Placco once again. Dane, what are you seeing?
Yeah, and we're continuing to get text messages from Casey Cronus up in the courtroom on the 7th floor. She says that they're still in the courtroom. The lawyers and the judge are still in the courtroom, tightening up loose ends, tying up loose ends, I should say, setting hearings going forward. This is important. Now, the judge ruled that Smollett will be kept on a recognizance bond, which is what he was on before. So they're not going to ask him to put any more money onto a bond now that he's been found guilty, and they're certainly apparently not going to to take him into custody at this point. The lawyers are consulting over a date to set on Zoom to discuss post-trial motions. It apparently will be next month. They're going to Zoom, I'm reading now, on January 27th for post-trial motions. So, Smollett and his family still in the courtroom. Court proceedings winding down right now, and we should be a few minutes, I would guess. Adding to Larry's point, I can tell you, based on some of the trial testimony, this was, the city of Chicago is going to make the argument that this was expensive for them to cover, put all this manpower into a hoax. The lead detective in the case testified last week that the department had put 3,000 man-hours into its investigation, looking of the initial report of a racial and homophobic attack against Jussie Smollett. And if you do the simple math of police officers making anywhere from $50 to $70 an hour, that's close to $200,000 in taxpayer dollars. So it will be interesting to see whether the city tries to recoup that. Of course, Mr. Smollett has a legal team of 6 well-known established lawyers, so one would imagine, given the amount of time they've poured into this case, he's probably spent at least that and probably considerably more.
Well, you guys, we've got our verdict. I expected it. I did not expect the 6th one. I did not expect him to be found guilty on the 6th one when they found him guilty on all 5. But I'm not sure what the 6th charge pertained to. It might have been something that was completely different from what he was already found guilty for. I'm not sure. But like he said, he'll be back in court next month, and he'll be working on sentencing then. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me, and I will definitely see you on the next one. Bye for now.